I had all the family's bank cards frozen while they were enjoying their beach vacation in Florida. And when they called me in panic, that's when they realized that the silly old lady dog sitter had more power than they ever imagined. My name is Valerie Thompson. I'm 67 years old, and I never thought one quiet weekend watching two Labradors would lead me to discover my own son's secret plan to take everything I owned. Sometimes, it takes being treated like free help to see that those around you have been planning something far worse behind your back. What I found that Sunday morning, when I saw the papers hidden inside Mark's desk drawer, was a betrayal beyond imagination. It was 11 a.m. when I found them, not by snooping, but because Buddy, the older Labrador, while cleaning up, the drawer slid open, revealing a folder labeled Valerie Thompson, Important Documents. I'd never seen that folder before. It was tucked inside the home office of my own house, the same house where my 40-year-old son, Mark, had been living with me for the past 3 years. My heart pounded as I opened it. The first page was a power of attorney with my forged signature, giving Mark full authority to sell all my assets. But I had never signed such a thing. Each page hit me like a punch to the gut. An estimate for a vacation home in Miami, blueprints for an apartment in Boston, and worst of all, a deposit contract for a luxury retirement facility in Palm Beach, already paid $15,000 directly from my account. Sitting on the floor, my hands trembling, both dogs staring at me with worried eyes, I realized it was no coincidence they left town that weekend. They'd gone Friday morning. Mark, 40, Olivia, his 36-year-old wife, and her mother, Helen, for what they called a family weekend at the beach. They left me to watch the dogs while they relaxed at Helen's condo, Florida. But now I knew the truth. They weren't vacationing. They were closing on a new house with money from selling mine, the home I'd lived in for over 30 years, where I'd raised Mark alone after my husband passed away, where I worked endless shifts at the hospital just to pay the mortgage. My hands shook as I kept flipping through the documents. There was a fake medical report diagnosing me with early dementia, a forged psychological evaluation stating I was unfit to live alone, and worst of all, a legal petition filed by a local attorney to declare me mentally incompetent. My own son was trying to strip me of my rights to steal everything I had. It was Mark, calling from the beach, cheerful as if his little scheme hadn't been exposed. "Hey, Mom. How are the dogs? They behaving?" I looked at Buddy and Max lying on the rug and took a slow breath. "They're perfect, sweetheart. How's the beach?" "It's amazing, Mom. The condo's incredible, right on the ocean. Olivia's mom loves it here. We're thinking about staying until Tuesday. Is that okay? Just 2 more days. It's so nice here," he added. 2 more days, just enough time to finish buying their dream home with my money, while I'd be sent away to the nursing home they'd already picked. "Sure, honey. Enjoy yourselves. I'll take care of Buddy and Max. You're the best, Mom. Olivia says you're going to love the surprise we got for you when we get back." The surprise. I already knew what that gift was: a private room in a nursing facility they'd call Mom's new home. After hanging up, I stood frozen in the living room, staring around my 3-bedroom house in Austin, Texas, the home I'd built with every ounce of my youth. The house that once echoed with my son's laughter, where I truly believed I still had a family. Mark had moved back in after his first divorce 3 years ago. Later, he brought Olivia, just temporarily, then married her. They said they'd stay only until they saved enough to buy their own place. That temporary stay turned permanent and then became a plan to take everything from me. I paid for everything: utilities, groceries, gas, even the dog's vet bills. I cooked, cleaned, did laundry, and cared for their home like it was my duty. They even had secondary cards on my account for emergencies. Emergencies, like buying a vacation home with my money. That's when an idea sparked bright and fierce. If they could plan behind my back, I could plan behind theirs. I grabbed my phone and called the bank. Hi. I'd like to freeze all cards linked to my account immediately. Yes, Miss Thompson. May I ask why? I suspect unauthorized use. Please freeze everything and issue new cards. Understood. Your current cards will be disabled within 10 minutes, and replacements will arrive within 3 business days. When I hung up, I felt something unfamiliar, not fear, not anger, power. For the first time in years, I had made a decision that would directly affect the people betraying me, and that was only the beginning. I took pictures of every document in that folder with my phone, then called the only person I trusted, my best friend of 30 years, Nancy. Nancy, I need you to come right now. It's urgent. Valerie, what's going on? I just found out my son is trying to steal my assets, and it's much worse than you think. Nancy arrived only 20 minutes later. She's 66, also widowed like me, and had been my neighbor for 15 years before moving into a condo downtown. When I showed her the papers, her face went pale. Oh my God, Valerie, this is real crime. I know, I said, my voice trembling but firm. But before they pay, I need to protect myself first. I've already frozen all the cards, and Monday morning, we're going to the bank and the notary to straighten everything out. But one thing I'm sure of. Tuesday, when they come back, they won't find the weak mother they used to know. Nancy frowned at me. What are you going to do, Valerie? I'll wait for them. And when they get here, they'll see that the confused old lady they planned to dump in a nursing home is a lot smarter than they thought. That night, lying in my quiet room in Austin, I planned every step. I wasn't just defending myself, I was turning the tables. If they thought I was weak, they would pay for that mistake. The battle had begun, and for the first time in my life, I was ready to win. Monday morning, I got up at 7 a.m. I hadn't been able to sleep since finding those documents. Nancy brought coffee and pastries as promised, but I couldn't eat a bite. Let's go to the bank first, she said. You have to protect yourself before it's too late. At Wells Fargo, things were even worse than I thought. Brenda, the manager, said Mark had tried to transfer $80,000 the previous week, almost all my savings. Luckily, the power of attorney had signature issues, she said. We asked him to bring you in person to confirm. Today, we've changed all your passwords, canceled all authorizations, and locked your account. No one can touch a dime without you present now. Leaving the bank, we went to the attorney's office. Sylvia, the clerk there, showed me the petition Mark had filed to declare me legally incompetent. According to the paperwork, I had memory loss and could no longer care for myself, and the appointed guardian, of course, was him. If the court approves this petition, Sylvia explained, your son will have full control over your assets. We got back home late that morning. I was exhausted, but knew the worst was still ahead. Nancy stayed with me. We prepared a light lunch and waited for the moment they realized their cards no longer worked. We didn't have to wait long. Around 2:30 p.m., my phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. My heart pounded. Nancy squeezed my hand and gestured. Answer it. Hello, Mom? Mark's voice was panicked, almost shouting. Mom, the cards don't work anymore. Which cards, son? Your account cards. We tried to pay for lunch and it got declined, and we can't withdraw cash either. What's going on? I took a deep breath. It was time to tell the truth. I canceled all the cards yesterday, Mark. On the other end, total silence. The kind of silence where I could almost hear ocean waves somewhere in the background. Then chaotic voices, Olivia asking something, Helen chiming in, her tone nervous. You canceled the cards? Why? Mom, we don't have any money here. Because I found the papers in your drawer, Mark. I know everything you're planning. Another silence. This one heavy like a stone on my chest. What papers? Nancy gestured for me to go on. The forged power of attorney you signed in my name, the incompetency petition you filed at the attorney's office, the retirement home contract in Palm Beach, and the $80,000 you tried to pull from my account. I know it all, Mark. I heard a noise like someone dropping a phone. Then Olivia shouting in the background. I told you she'd suspect. Helen trying to calm them. Take it easy. Calm down. Mark came back on the line, his voice shaking, breaking with fear. Mom, it's not what you think. We can explain. Explain what, Mark? The plan I found in Olivia's handwriting, listing week by week what to do. Even a how to handle if Mom resists section. You even planned to drug me if needed. Mom, please let us explain. There's nothing to explain, Mark. You left me home to watch the dogs while finalizing a plan to steal from me and lock me away. You really thought I was just a confused old woman, didn't you? I heard Olivia grab the phone, her voice high and frantic. Mrs. Valerie, you don't understand. Everything we did was for your benefit. You can't live alone at your age anymore. For my benefit? My voice rang out louder than I meant. Stealing my money was for my benefit? Locking me in a nursing home was for my benefit? You're confused. You can't care for yourself anymore. I stood up, my hand clenched around the phone. Listen carefully, Olivia. I've uncovered every detail of your dirty plan. I went to the bank, to the attorney's office, and talked to my lawyer. I know exactly the crimes you're committing. And the confused one here isn't me, it's you. The people who think you can treat me like an idiot. Olivia started yelling that I was overreacting, that they only wanted to protect me. Helen grabbed the phone, her tone icy. Valerie, you're making a fuss. Everyone only wants what's best for you. What's best for me, Helen? I answered, calm but cold. Everyone wants what's best for me, except you. Because anyone who really wanted the best for me would not forge medical records, would not try to steal my assets, and would not plan to lock me in a nursing home against my will. Mark came back on the line, his voice choked. Mom, how are we supposed to get home? We don't have any money. Just like how I'd be expected to live in the nursing home you picked. Figure it out yourselves. I'm giving you until tomorrow to get back home. I paused, then spoke each word clearly. And when you return, we'll have a conversation you will never forget. A conversation where I will decide whether you go to jail or simply leave my house forever. I hung up before Mark could say more. Nancy hugged me tight. You did great, Valerie. For the first time in days, I actually felt in control. Now, they were tasting the helplessness they wanted me to suffer. But I knew this fight wasn't over. When they came back, I would be the one setting the rules. That afternoon passed slowly, like honey dripping off a spoon. Nancy stayed with me until around 5 p.m., helping me organize the paperwork and bolstering me for what was to come. When she left, I was alone in the house with Max and Buddy. But for the first time in days, I didn't feel truly alone. I felt powerful. I fixed a simple dinner and sat on the porch watching the quiet street in Austin, Texas. Every car that passed made me wonder, is that them? Where would they get gas money? Did they borrow from Olivia's parents? Or call someone they know and swallow their pride to explain why they had no cash? The thought gave me a bitter satisfaction. For years, I'd humiliated myself for them. Always pleasing, always yielding, always shrinking my own needs. Now, they were tasting their own poison. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. He wrote only, "We borrowed some money. We'll be back around 10 p.m. I didn't reply. Let them worry, not knowing what awaited. I used the time to steel myself. I called Caroline, my cousin, a lawyer in Dallas, to confirm all the legal details. She said that with the evidence I had, a lawsuit against Mark would be extremely straightforward. Elder fraud, forgery of legal documents, embezzlement, definitely prison time, if you pursue it to the end. But I still wasn't sure I could destroy my own son, even if he deserved it. Even if he'd planned to ruin me first, he was still the little boy I raised alone after my husband died. The boy who slept in my bed when he had nightmares, who I carried when he had a fever, who cried on my shoulder when he fell. Where had that boy gone? To become a man who could forge documents to rob his mother? At 10:15 p.m., I heard a car pull into the garage. My heart pounded not with fear, but with a confusing mix of sadness, anger, and resolve. They stepped out of the car in silence, without the usual loud chatter. Even from a distance, the mood was heavy. Mark led the way, his face looking like he was at a funeral. Olivia followed, avoiding my eyes. Helen, Olivia's mother, came last, still carrying that familiar hauteur, as if nothing had happened. But even she seemed less confident now. They took seats in the living room, like defendants awaiting judgment. Mark sat in his usual armchair but looked small and hunched. Olivia stood against the wall, nervously fiddling with her phone. Helen chose the sofa, crossed her legs, and looked at me as if I were an employee giving an account. I sat in my rocking chair, the same chair I'd nursed Mark in as a baby, and read him stories from as a child. The irony of the moment almost made me laugh. Minutes passed, with no one speaking, as if everyone were gauging who would start. I decided I would, after all. This was my house. I asked bluntly, "Where did you get the money to get home? For my benefit?" My voice rang louder than I intended. Stealing my money was for my benefit? Locking me in a nursing home was for my benefit? You're confused. You can't care for yourself anymore. I stood up, my hand gripping the phone tight. Listen to me, Olivia. I've uncovered every detail of your dirty plan. I went to the bank, to the attorney's office, and spoke with my lawyer. I know exactly the crimes you are committing. And the confused one here is not me, it's you, the people who think you can treat me like a fool. Helen grabbed the phone, her tone icy. Valerie, you're making a fuss. Everyone only wants what's best for you. What's best for me, Helen? I answered, calm but cold. Everyone wants what's best for me, except you. Because anyone who truly wanted the best for me would not forge medical records, would not try to steal my assets, and would not plan to lock me in a nursing home against my will. Mark came back on the line, his voice choked. Mom, how are we supposed to get home? We don't have any money. Just like how I'd be expected to live in the nursing home, you chose figure it out yourselves. I'm giving you until tomorrow to get back home. I paused, then spoke each word clearly. And when you come back, we will have a conversation you will never forget. A conversation where I will decide whether you go to jail or simply leave my house forever. I hung up before Mark could say more. Nancy hugged me tight. You did great, Valerie. For the first time in days, I truly felt in control. Now, they were tasting the helplessness they had planned for me. But I knew this battle wasn't over. When they returned, I would be the one setting the rules. That afternoon passed slowly, like honey dripping off a spoon. Nancy stayed with me until around 5 p.m., helping me organize all the papers and fortifying me for what was to come. When she left, I was alone in the house with Max and Buddy, but for the first time in days, I didn't feel truly alone. I felt strong. I made a simple dinner and sat on the porch watching the quiet street in Austin, Texas. Every car that passed made me ask, is that them? Where would they get money for gas? Did they borrow from Olivia's parents? Or call someone they know and swallow their pride to explain why they had no cash? The thought gave me a bitter satisfaction. For years I had humiliated myself for them, always trying to please, always yielding, always shrinking. Now, they were tasting their own poison. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. He wrote only, "We borrowed some money. We'll be back around 10 p.m." I didn't reply. Let them worry, not knowing what awaited. I used that time to prepare myself. I called Caroline, my cousin, a lawyer in Dallas, to confirm all the legal details. She said that with the evidence I had, a suit against Mark would be extremely straightforward. Elder fraud, forgery of legal documents, embezzlement, definite prison time, if you pursue it to the end. But I still wasn't sure I could destroy my own son, even if he deserved it, even if he'd planned to ruin me first. He was still the little boy I raised alone after my husband died. The boy who slept in my bed when he had nightmares, whom I carried when he had a fever, who cried on my shoulder when he fell. Where had that boy gone? To become a man who could forge documents to rob his mother. At 10:15 p.m., I heard a car pull into the garage. My heart pounded not from fear, but from a mix of sadness, anger, and resolve. They stepped out of the car in silence, without their usual loud chatter. Even from a distance, the mood was heavy. Mark led the way, his face like someone attending a funeral. Olivia followed, avoiding my eyes. Helen, Olivia's mother, came last, still carrying that familiar hauteur as if nothing had happened. But even she seemed less confident now. They sat in the living room like defendants awaiting judgment. Mark sank into his usual armchair, looking small and hunched. Olivia stood against the wall, nervously fiddling with her phone. Helen chose the sofa, crossed her legs, and looked at me as if I were an employee giving a report. I sat in my rocking chair, the same chair I'd nursed Mark in as a baby, and read stories from when he was small. The irony almost made me laugh. Minutes passed with no one speaking, as if everyone were measuring who would begin. I decided I would after all. This is my house, and I am in charge. I asked bluntly, "Where? Did you get the money to get home?" I'm not ashamed, because I didn't do anything wrong. The only ones who should feel ashamed are you. I stood up, my voice firm. You have until the end of this week to leave my house, I said, looking straight at Mark and Olivia. You may take your personal belongings, but nothing else. The 2 dogs, Max and Buddy, will stay with me because I've taken better care of them than their actual owners ever did. And if any of you try anything, forge documents, pressure me, or threaten me, I'll call the police immediately. You can't throw your own son out of the house. I absolutely can, I replied. This house is in my name, and I pay for everything. As for you, Helen, you can leave right now. You don't live here. Desperation spread across Mark and Olivia's faces. Mark begged for more time, saying they needed to figure things out. Olivia burst into tears, saying how humiliating it would be to move back in with her mother after being married. Helen, who had tried so hard to maintain her composure, finally lost it when she realized she'd have to take her daughter and son-in-law back into her home. But I didn't feel pity. All I felt was a deep sadness for having raised a son capable of betraying his own mother, and an overwhelming sense of relief that I had discovered everything before it was too late. That night, when Mark and Olivia went upstairs and Helen returned home, her face pale with confusion, I sat alone in the living room with Max and Buddy. The dogs seemed to sense the tension. They wouldn't leave my side, as if they knew I was now truly their owner. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully. Not because everything was over, but because, at last, I had taken back control of my life, and that made all the difference. The days that followed were some of the strangest of my life. Mark and Olivia moved through the house like ghosts, leaving early, returning late, avoiding eye contact. When we crossed paths in the kitchen or the living room, They'd lower their heads and walk past me like I was a stranger. And honestly, that's exactly what I had become to them, a stranger. The gentle, easily manipulated mother they once knew had died the day I found those documents. In her place stood a woman they no longer knew how to handle. On Thursday morning, I overheard them whispering anxiously in their room. Olivia was crying, saying she didn't want to move back in with her mother. Mark tried to comfort her, but his voice was tired and defeated. They talked about money, about packing, about how they'd explain everything to friends. I felt no sympathy. Listening to them was like hearing strangers plan their own lives. People who once tried to destroy mine didn't deserve compassion. Max and Buddy, on the other hand, adjusted quickly to our new life. Since Tuesday, they'd followed me everywhere like two fluffy bodyguards, as if they understood they now belonged to me. Mark tried calling Max, but the dog didn't even turn his head. He just walked over and lay down at my feet. The humiliation on Mark's face was unmistakable. Even his own dog no longer respected him. By Friday, I had an unexpected visitor. It was Susan, my neighbor of more than 10 years, a polite, reserved woman in her 70s. She rang the bell around 2 p.m., holding a tray of warm chocolate chip cookies. "Valerie, may I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, sounding hesitant. We sat on the porch with coffee and cookies. Susan turned her cup nervously in her hands before finally speaking. "I couldn't help but notice something strange going on at your house lately. I saw Mark and Olivia loading boxes into their car. Is everything all right?" I decided to tell her the truth, not every detail, but enough for her to understand that my son had tried to hurt me and that I was protecting myself. Susan was shocked, though not surprised. After a moment of silence, she said, "You know, Valerie, I always found it odd how they treated you, especially your daughter-in-law. I once saw them at the grocery store, and she spoke to you like you were the help." Her words stung, but they also helped me realize something. Outsiders had seen the disrespect long before I was willing to admit it myself. Susan continued, "And Mark, he changed completely after meeting Olivia. He used to be polite, always greeting everyone. After marrying her, he became cold, distant, didn't say hello to anyone. We talked for over an hour. She told me she'd gone through something similar years ago, when her own children tried to convince her to sell her old house and move into a smaller apartment for easier care. She'd refused, and to this day, she thanked God she hadn't listened. "We get older, Valerie, but we're not stupid," she said firmly. "Sometimes you have to bare your claws before people learn to respect you." Knowing that even my neighbors had noticed the way my family treated me made me realize I wasn't exaggerating or overreacting. I was simply responding to a situation that anyone from the outside could see clearly. By Saturday, Mark tried one last trick. He came to find me in the kitchen while I was preparing dinner, wearing that lost little boy expression that used to make me melt. I kept stirring the pot of beans without turning around. "If you're here to ask me to change my mind, don't bother." "It's not that," he said quietly. "I just want to explain how everything started." I turned off the stove and faced him. There was something different about his demeanor, a humility I hadn't seen in years. I decided to listen. Mark said it all. Began when Olivia's mother, Helen, planted the idea in their heads. She said it wasn't safe for an older woman like you to live alone in such a big house, that you needed special care. At first, he resisted, but Olivia kept insisting every single day. "It's for your mom's own good. She'll be happier somewhere with people her age, activities, doctors, and care." "And you believed that?" I asked. He lowered his head. I wanted to believe it. It was easier than admitting that we were just thinking about the money. That was the confession I'd been waiting for. At least he was honest enough to admit that greed was part of the motive. Mark went on to explain how the plan evolved. At first, it was just an idea to place me in a nursing home. Then Helen suggested they could use the money from selling my house to buy a vacation condo in Florida as an investment. Olivia started researching the process of declaring someone legally incapacitated and discovered that with medical documentation, they could gain full legal control of my assets. It all just spiraled, Mom, he whispered. Each step seemed reasonable at the time. We kept convincing ourselves we were doing the right thing. And the fake medical records? I asked coldly. Were those part of the spiral too? His face turned red. He explained that Helen knew a doctor named Dr. Henry Matthews from her church group and persuaded him that I was having memory problems, that the family was worried and needed paperwork to protect me. The doctor signed the forms without ever examining me, relying solely on their story. He thought he was helping, Mom. Helen can be very convincing. And what about you, Mark? I said, staring straight into his eyes. Did you also think you were helping when you forged my signature on those authorization papers? He didn't answer, just stood there, rubbing his and hands together, the same nervous gesture he used to make when he was a child caught doing something wrong. But he wasn't a child anymore. He was a 40-year-old man who had planned to steal from his own mother. Still, seeing him like that hurt. After all, he was my son, the boy I'd raised alone after my husband died, the one who had relied on me for everything for so many years. But then I remembered how he'd treated me lately like a burden, a problem to be handled. Mark, I said, sitting down at the kitchen table, do you know what the worst part of all this is? What, Mom? It's not the plan to take my money, and it's not the fake papers. It's the fact that you all thought I was a useless old woman who didn't understand anything, just a burden. He started to protest, but I raised my hand to silence him. For years, I lowered myself just to please you all. I cooked, cleaned, paid the bills, took care of Max and Buddy just to feel like I still had a purpose. But you saw that as weakness, as a sign that I couldn't handle life anymore. Mom, I never thought you were weak. Yes, you did, Mark. Otherwise, you wouldn't have thought you could fool me so easily. He was silent for a long moment, as if trying to process every word. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. I've ruined everything. I lost the best mother anyone could ask for, all because of greed. I looked at him and said softly, No, Mark, you didn't lose me because of greed. You lost me because of disrespect. By Sunday, the last day of the deadline I had given them, the house had become a chaotic kind of order. Mark and Olivia spent the entire day packing, sorting clothes, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. I sat on the porch, sipping coffee and working on a crossword puzzle, as if watching a movie unfold in my own house. Olivia cried while folding clothes, and Mark carried boxes to the car, his face dark as if he were headed to a funeral. Helen, Olivia's mother, arrived in the afternoon to help, but the tension in the air made even her stay mostly silent. Around 5 p.m., they had finished loading everything into the car. The house that had once held 3 adults and 2 dogs suddenly felt wide and quiet, but not empty. It was as if it had finally exhaled, at last able to rest. Mark was the last to say goodbye. He stopped at the porch where I sat, his eyes red, wearing an expression I'd never seen before: sadness, shame, and somewhere in it, a glimmer of respect. Mom, I want to apologize one more time. For everything we've done, for how we treated you, for all of it. I looked at him without standing up. My son was there, but he wasn't there anymore. The man in front of me was the one who had tried to destroy me, but also the boy I had raised with all my love. Mark, do you know what hurt me the most? It wasn't what you did. It was realizing you thought I wasn't worthy of respect. You deserve the whole world, Mom. I was so stupid not to see it sooner. Maybe someday You'll learn to value people before you lose them." He stood there for a few minutes, as if wanting to say more, but unable to find the words. Finally, he simply said, "I love you, Mom." I heard the car pull out of the garage, then fade down the street. Max and Buddy, the two dogs who had stayed by my side during all the packing, finally relaxed and ran around the yard. For the first time in 3 years, I was alone in my own house. And for the first time in a long time, alone didn't mean abandoned, it meant free. I walked through the house, room by room. Mark and Olivia's room was empty, only the marks of furniture left on the floor. The dressing room Olivia had turned into her office was now clean. The bathroom no longer had the expensive cosmetics she'd bought with my money. The house was truly mine again. I cooked a simple dinner, cheese, omelet, and salad. I ate on the porch, watching Max and Buddy play in the yard, now officially their territory too. The silence around me wasn't frightening. It wasn't the heavy silence of tense days anymore, but a peaceful one. After dinner, I called Linda and told her they were gone. She said she'd come on Saturday to celebrate my Freedom Day. I also called my cousin Caroline, my lawyer, and told her that for now I didn't want to sue anyone, I just wanted everything to settle. "But Valerie," she reminded me, "don't let the statute of limitations run out. If you change your mind, you'll still have time to take legal action." I promised not to miss the deadline. Just knowing I had the choice gave me peace of mind. If they ever tried anything against me again, I had enough evidence to destroy them in court. That night, lying in bed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: pride in myself. I had faced a terrible betrayal and come out victorious. I had found a strength I never knew I still had. I had learned to value myself and demand the respect I deserve. At 67 years old, I was starting a new life. A life where I was the main character, no longer standing on the sidelines. A life where my needs mattered as much as anyone else's. A life where I finally understood the difference between loving someone and sacrificing myself for them. And for the first time in decades, I fell asleep with a smile on my face. 6 months have passed since Mark and Olivia left my house. 6 months that changed my life in ways I never thought possible at 67. Now, as I tell you this story, I look around and see a completely different woman than before. The first week after they left was an adjustment. The house felt more spacious and breathable than ever. It was as if it had finally been able to breathe after years of being stifled. Max and Buddy also adjusted quickly. Now they sleep in my room, something Olivia had strictly forbidden before, saying it was unsanitary, that dogs shouldn't be on the bed. How ridiculous. My two furry friends give me more love and companionship than the family who lived with me for 3 years ever did. The following Saturday, Linda came to visit as promised. She brought a chocolate cake and a bottle of sparkling wine to celebrate my Liberation Day, as she called it. We sat on the porch, talking about future plans. "Valerie, do you realize how much you've changed?" Linda asked while pouring wine. "You're full of energy, something I haven't seen in you for years." It was true. I felt vibrant, excited, and more interested in everything around me than ever before, as if I had just woken from a long sleep and was finally seeing the world clearly. I decided to use that new energy to transform the house. I started with Mark and Olivia's old room, turning it into a home office and small creative studio. I'd always wanted to learn to paint, so I bought paints, brushes, and a few canvases. At 67, I became an apprentice artist. My first painting was of the garden, as seen from the kitchen window. It wasn't perfect, but it held deep meaning, the perspective of a free woman painting her own life. I also redid the bathroom they used. I threw out all the expensive cosmetics Olivia had left behind. She probably thought I'd call her to pick them up, using it as an excuse to come back. I never called. I turned that bathroom into a cozy guest bathroom with plants and colorful towels. My style. not hers. The first visitor to the fully reborn house was someone I didn't expect. 2 months after they left, the doorbell rang one Thursday afternoon. When I opened it, it was Mark alone. He looked completely different, thinner, with scruffy facial hair and wrinkled clothes. He seemed to have aged 10 years in just 2 months. He asked to talk, and although my first instinct was to refuse, I let him in. We sat in the living room, he in the familiar armchair, me in my rocking chair. Max and Buddy immediately came to lie at my feet, like two silent bodyguards. Mark tried to pet Max, but the dog completely ignored him. "Mom, how are you?" he asked. And for the first time in years, I heard real gentleness in my son's voice. "I'm very well, Mark. Better than ever." He looked around, noticing the changes in the house, the new plants, the paintings I had hung on the walls. The house looks so different, more beautiful, more alive. "Exactly," I replied. Mark talked about his current life. Living at Helen's house, Olivia's mother, was a nightmare. His mother-in-law put all the blame on him, saying everything had been his idea, that he had manipulated her daughter. Olivia defended him sometimes and blamed him other times, making the atmosphere in the house so toxic he could barely stand it. Things got worse when Helen discovered Dr. Henry Matthews might be sued for signing those fake medical reports. "She's panicking, scared of going to prison," he said. How ironic, when they were planning to hurt me, none of them thought about prison. Now, they were trembling. Mark continued, his voice cracking. "Olivia asked for a divorce last week. She said she can't even look at me anymore, that I ruined her family." I didn't feel pity, only a distant sadness, like hearing about a stranger's tragedy. Mark had chosen that path, and now he was facing the consequences. "Why did you come here, Mark?" "To ask for forgiveness." Truly, ask for forgiveness. Not the rushed apology from the day you found out, but a sober apology from someone who knows exactly what he's done. He broke down crying, not out of self-pity, but out of genuine remorse. He said he had spent 2 months looking back at every moment of the past 3 years, trying to understand how he could betray his own mother. "I became a man you never taught me to be. I let others influence me, people who saw you only as an obstacle, not a person. And worst of all, I started seeing you that way too." "Why was that, Mark?" Too. "Because it was easier, Mom. Easier than admitting I was greedy. Easier than admitting I was taking advantage of you. So I convinced myself you were weak and needed to be taken care of." We talked for almost 2 hours for the first time in years. It was a real conversation, not fake, not manipulative. Mark took full responsibility for his actions. He didn't blame Olivia, his mother-in-law, or the circumstances. "I only want to ask one thing, Mom. Not to move back in, not for you to forgive and pretend nothing happened. I just want a chance to rebuild this relationship from the start." "Rebuild how?" I asked. "As a son who knows how to respect his mother, as a man who recognizes the strength of the woman who gave him life, as a human being, learning to love the right way." I stayed silent for a moment, looking at the 42-year-old man crying in my living room, trying to find the boy I had raised. That boy was still there, buried under layers of selfishness and greed, but still there. "All right, Mark. You can visit me once a month, but you have to call ahead. No showing up unexpectedly, no borrowing money, no trying to persuade me to do anything. Just come to talk, like two people learning to understand each other again." "I agree, Mom. And if you try to manipulate me even once, if you try to convince me to change my life or cross the boundaries I set, there won't be a second chance." "I understand." He kept his word. Mark began visiting me once a month, always calling ahead, always respectful. At first he stayed only briefly, as if afraid of crossing an invisible line. But gradually, the conversations became more natural. I started discovering things about my son I had never known before. That he had been jealous of the love between me and his father. That he had always felt inferior. That he had married Olivia not out of love, but out of convenience. He had spent years living with the shame of being a failure, dependent on his mother. You turned the gratitude you felt for me into resentment, Mark admitted during one visit. Because it was easier to blame you for my dependency than to take responsibility and grow up. I've also discovered many things about myself in these talks. That you used to control me under the guise of care. That you unintentionally kept me dependent so you could feel useful. That out of fear of losing me, you let me stay immature. We were both wrong, Mom. You allowed it, and I exploited it. But at least you were brave enough to break the cycle. 6 months after that first visit, Mark came with news. He had found a job at a tech company in Chicago. He was about to move into a small apartment, start a new life, and leave Austin and its toxic influences behind. I need to learn how to be an independent man before I can learn how to be a son again, he said. The day he moved out, I did something I hadn't done in years, packed a few portions of food for him to take along. Not because he asked, not out of obligation, but simply because I wanted to. It was my way of saying that, no matter what, I still hoped my child would do well. Thank you for everything, Mom, for teaching me that every action has consequences, for not abandoning me completely, for showing me what it means to be a person of dignity. Now, 6 months after it all began, my life is completely different. I have a routine that satisfies me, activities that excite me, and healthy relationships. I joined a painting club for seniors at the community center. There, I met women with stories similar to mine, women who had been controlled by their children, treated as burdens instead of human beings. I realized my story wasn't rare, but the way I responded to it was. But you had the courage to stand up, and that inspired all of us. I became an unofficial mentor in the group. Women came to share their family stories, asking how to deal with disrespectful children or grandchildren. I always tell them one thing. Respect is something you demand, not something you beg for. Max and Buddy are now big and happy. The backyard, once just a walkway, has become their playground. I built them a little house with soft cushions and toys scattered everywhere. Neighbors often say they've never seen dogs so well cared for. Nancy, the other day. Actually, I'm the lucky one to have them, I replied. They taught me that loyalty and love don't require shared blood. Mark still calls me every week from Chicago. He talks about his new job, learning to take care of himself, and going to therapy to understand the behaviors that led him down the wrong path. He never mentions coming back to Austin or living with me again. He understands that our relationship now is between two independent adults, not a dependent son and a caregiving mother. Olivia tried to reach out once, a few months ago. She said she wanted to clear up misunderstandings, to restore family harmony. She said she was going through a divorce, that she was struggling and needed my support. I told her she made her choice when she planned to steal from me. Support only exists when there's respect, I said, and you never respected me. So now, we go our separate ways. She cried, saying I was holding on to resentment. Maybe I was, but I had learned that forgiveness doesn't mean allowing those who betrayed you to re-enter your life. As for Mrs. Helen, she never showed up again. Neighbors said she's been anxious, afraid of being sued for the forged documents that Dr. Henry Matthews has been reported to the medical board and could lose his license. The whole situation became a scandal in her social circle. Sometimes I feel pity. Sometimes I think maybe I should just let it go and move on. But then I remember that handwritten plan titled Planning My Forced Institutionalization, and the list, Prepare sedatives if she resists. Some betrayals are unforgivable not out of hatred, but out of self-respect. Now, as I share this story with you, I'm sitting on my porch, watching Max and Buddy play in the yard. The sun is setting, painting the sky with colors I'll try to capture in my next painting. The house is full of life, my plants, my books, my music, my colors. I am Valerie Thompson, a 68-year-old woman who has learned that it's never too late to start over, who understands the difference between being alone and being free, and who has realized that true family is made of those who respect you, not just those who share your blood. If anyone asks whether I regret how I reacted, whether I was too harsh, whether I should have forgiven and forgotten, my answer is no. At 68, I've learned that self-respect isn't cruelty, it's survival. And for the first time in my life, I truly feel alive. This story is fictional, but inspired by real events. Names and locations have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved. We don't tell it to judge anyone, but to remind that even within our own homes, we can be hurt by those we love most. Valerie chose to speak up instead of suffering in silence. And you, if someone you love betrayed you, would you stay silent to keep the peace, or stand up to protect your dignity? Whatever your choice, believe that God always gives us the strength to rise again and start over at any age. If you felt connected to this story, don't leave yet. Choose one of the 2 videos on your screen to continue listening to heartfelt stories of courage, love, and forgiveness.